I love game guides. I have nearly 100 game guides from a wide variety of publishers, be it Piggyback, Brady, Prima, Versus Books, you name it, I've probably got it. Except for some of the smaller ones. We'll get to those. Don't worry about it. We'll get to those. You want to talk about a game guide? That's game guide. Okay, under certain conditions, you could probably qualify this as a game guide. I don't know who. I might be able to. For all the good game guides I've done, for some reason, modern discourse seems to have reduced game guides to a relic of the past. All I've seen online, be it from Scott the Waz, Ogles, Kitetails, Indy Jacob, Griffo, and Level 1 Sword, tend to focus on guides being something that doesn't exist anymore, and the general consensus I've read is it's only because of the internet's existence, which is fair, but I believe there's a little bit more to be understood with game guides that goes beyond simply saying, it's a dead medium, why bother? It had a lasting impact in a way that I don't think people realize, but I've always been fascinated by them. I am going to be showcasing a variety of game guides every couple of weeks, some weeks, see how the work schedule goes, to showcase where I believe online discourse should be with game guides. In terms of understanding game guides beyond a failed or at least outdated medium, there's only two sources of knowledge I've managed to find. The first is an interview with Casey Lowe, a game guide author who wrote for Versus Books, eventually some Nintendo Power things, and some other guides here and there. A lot of guides, I really like Casey Lowe. And I've currently been contacting a variety of game guide authors, and one of them directed me to what I believe is the best source for general game guide writing discussion, and that is The Walkthrough by Doug Walsh. It's actually good. It's only like 140 pages. It's not long, but it's interesting. It's interesting. It offers a lot of discussion into sort of what the writing process was like, how he got started, and kind of goes from the beginning of his career through the very end after the Prima Brady merger. It's very interesting. And yet I don't seem to find a lot of, as I mentioned before, online discourse for the others. And so, in this first part of this series, I want to set a baseline. And I'm going to set a baseline with what I consider to be probably the most average guide. And I don't mean average as an insult, and I don't mean average in the sense of it's not well written or it's not well handled. In fact, this game guide is one of the better ones I've used. Like ever. It's solid, and it covers the game very well. And when I say average, it's a guide that back when it came out would have been pretty commonplace in someone's household if they had the game, and would have used pretty regularly. There's always issues with guides, whatever, but it's the game guide of game guides. And that game guide is going to be Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. PS2, right there at the bottom. See that? PS2. In order to set a baseline, I'm going to be going through the guide section by section, albeit not in... It'll go with detail, but it's not going to be exhaustive because at a certain point, a guide's a guide, right? Regardless of how many guides you look at, they're going to have a certain flow, a certain style, a certain genre to them, that after one or two sections, you go, got it. In order to start this process, we must first look at the 100% checklist included in the very beginning of the guide and the way the table of contents is laid out. The 100% section of the guide is a shockingly small paragraph, and it only lists, it lists what you need 100%, but it lists it in a way that feels very small for such a large game. So first, you got to complete the missions, reasonable, buy the properties in the game. Again, makes sense. Acquire every asset for said properties, all the little things, the extra activities like that. Cool. All the save houses, all the gang tags, all the photo ops, all the oysters, and all the horseshoes. The one thing you don't need to do is all the stunt jumps. And I find that interesting in that stunt jumps are kind of integral to the game. They're a way to get around the map and get a different view of the map, but apparently they're not needed for the 100% in accordance with this guide. The next section is the table of contents. You'll notice it starts in Chapter 1, which is Los Santos, which makes sense. That's the first area of the game. Then it goes to the Badlands, which, again, makes sense. That's where you need to go. Then San Fierro, which, again, cool. San Fierro is where you should go. Now, anyone who's playing the game will tell you after San Fierro comes the desert and Las Venturas. Once you unlock the desert, you get Las Venturas, which I think is fair. And then finally, you end up going to Los Santos to finish out the game and the plot. But this guy doesn't do that. Smack dab between San Fierro and the desert / Las Venturas, what you end up having is the odd jobs, the side quests, the collectibles, smack dab in the middle of the guide. And it kind of makes you wonder why. Before we get into the why that's smack dab in the middle, because there is both rhyme and reason for it, let's just start with the very first section, basics. The basics section covers everything you'd want with regards to weapons, RPG mechanics, the way leveling works in this game, and I believe, let me take a look here. I believe it also covers some of the game mechanics. I don't know. The basics section of the guide doesn't cover gameplay mechanics or movement, like left stick to do this, X to do this, R1, R2. What it actually covers is a list of all the available weapons, screenshots of them, and how you unlock them. But not necessarily where to find them, where to buy them, just that you can level stuff up and get them, which, I mean, that's fine. I think that's reasonable. But where it gets interesting is it has an entire section dedicated to all the various vehicles in the game, listing kind of what they look like, their class, be it, like a sports car or a boat or air, but it doesn't cover where to find them. This comes up later. Keep that in the back of your mind. What it does cover, though, is their inherent sex appeal, which I find kind of funny. I played this game a hot minute ago, nearly 10 years ago now, and I gotta be honest, I don't remember that being a major mechanic, but there it is. Apparently, you can find out if you're sexy in a dinghy, much like everyone's favorite band, Little Big Town. I guess I find pontoons sexy. If you have a pontoon boat, leave this video. It's not for you. You have a pontoon boat, I'm telling you, this is not for you. The final thing this section has that I really do enjoy is it lists on the bottom just some ads in the game, little tiny world building things for the various dealerships and where you can find it, and it's just cute. Advertisements are world building, and it's nice that it includes it in this section. It says, look at that, it's pretty goofy. Doesn't tell you anything, it's not particularly helpful, but it gives you a nice flow for the guide. Now let's get into kind of the meat of the guide, sort of where the actual action takes place, Chapter 1, Los Santos. Here's the deal. Each guide section has an introduction, which is kind of a bunch of different maps and things like that it goes into the various main mission. They call them strands because I suppose they are kind of segmented out within certain groups. It's like, this chunk, this chunk, this chunk. If you played anything before this, like GTA 3, really the 3D stuff, GTA 3 or Vice City, had a similar mechanic, but just chunks of people. But starts with an introduction, maps and collectibles and things, very briefly, has the various strands, and then it wraps up into the next chapter, not really touching a lot of side content. That comes in the on-job section. So let's look at the first section, called Los Santos, where the game starts, right? The map of the first section, or should I say the maps of the first section, are very, very thick and cluttered. There is a total of three discrete maps in the first section, not including if they pop up in odd jobs. We'll get to that one later. But the very first map covers the restaurants, the clothing, the various stores, points of interest that you could do, visit, or see. And it's laid out in a grid pattern from C down to F, and from, I guess you could say, 3 to 6. Listen, when they start saying a quadrant like E6, there's a lot of activity. That's a very large square. I feel like they would have been better making it like an A through M and 1 through 10 for this section, and getting really fine squares. Of course, with the finer squares, you need grid lines, and grid lines look messy, and depending on the paper used, it can be very tough to get a clean image. So I suppose this is a good intermediary, right? E6, you can see it's roughly that quadrant. You can pull up the map in this game, like the earlier GTAs, so that does help tremendously. Where it starts to get questionable is security services, or the section that lists where you can find weapons, you can find paint sprays, police bribes, body armor, adrenaline. There's a lot of those in Los Santos. It's a very, very big area. And because of that, once you get to your, let's say E6 again, very cluttered. And the numbers get very hard to see. And if you have the guide in front of you, it's easier to see than, if you scanned it or took a photo. But you can see very quickly, just even looking at E6 drawn in square format, they're so close. And it just gets very difficult to find which one you're looking for when all the numbers are right there. It works as a guide, it gets you through it, but it is I suppose, from a hindsight perspective, a failure of paper that an interactive map online may make better. But again, it's a very good map, it's a very good layout, it's very helpful. The final section found in each of the main chapters. We're just going to highlight chapter 1 because it's the first chapter and they're all the same, after that. But the final section of the first chapter maps are unique attractions, which are the gang tags, oysters, flowers, and unique stunt jumps. One thing I did not realize as I played GTA San Andreas the first time is that only gang tags are found in Los Santos. It looks like each area has a discrete collectibles with some bleed over, right? Oysters aren't all of them, flowers and stunt jumps, but I find it interesting that gang tags are solely in Los Santos and not another part of the map. Those red dots get real thick. Boy, those get pretty heavy. Again, look at E6, E5, any of those. And if they're right on the line between E and D, it's a toss-up between how you want to categorize it on the map. For reference, however, I included the intro to the second part of the guide, the Badlands, Chapter 2. This is the only one we're going to cover here, but Chapter 2, Badlands, and you can see it's way easier to explore. Granted, it's an open area, right? The Badlands is not some huge, wide section. It's just pretty small. You got stun jumps, oysters, flowers, and nothing beyond that. It's not really more of I wouldn't call it an area as it is an intermediary, but it's cool to see it laid out, and you can see the density of Los Santos and what care it takes to fill out these maps as compared to, and they're all that care taken, but boy, Los Santos is dense, and it's really hard to track it with such wide coordinates. Since we've established the way every chapter works in the beginning with the maps and the various legends and laying out the collectibles, let's get into the flow of each and every section. We're just going to cover chapter 1 with a selection from chapter 3, if only because they're the same. Beyond that, it's just there's no reason to make it verbose and cover each one. It's what do you want? It's a game guide. After one chapter, you've seen how it's structured. I'm not going to... It's just not worth wasting my time or yours. So, starting with chapter 1, what we can see is every section lays out the main missions, how you do them, what you can do with them, and the various activities unlocked when you do them. In the first section, you can see the very beginning, it lays out gameplay elements included, new vehicle introduced, using map blips, contact point, location of Grove Street families, safe territories, and the bike. Cool. It's helpful. If you're not used to playing games or wondering how the game flows, this gives you the game flow. It gives you what you can unlock, what you can do, all those various aspects. The next sections in the guides are kind of blurbs that give you more tips, more tricks, more advice about what you're currently doing. As you can see within the first chapter, there's a section on secret weapons where you can find a special weapon within the mission. And it also gives you advice on how to sprint or pedal faster, which is to say mashing X versus just holding it, such that if you hold X, you walk, or you power walk. And if you mash it, you run and you build stamina. But it's nice that it lays out those mechanics in a way that is easy to read and see within the important section. The next thing the guide covers, and I find this very helpful, there's actually two. The first is if there's a prerequisite, right? If there's a mission you need to do before a mission, it lays out, do this one first, and then you can do this one. In the case of tagging up the turf, which is the first sweet mission, you have to do the rider mission from the beginning quest line. And this mission unlocks the spray can. It teaches you how to kind of move your character and explore the world. And it teaches you the way to gain respect, right? Which is by doing missions. Makes sense. This guide also includes small maps if the mission behooves the map. So in this case, for tagging up the turf, it shows you where your first tagging location is, your second tagging location is, and the various starts and finishes of the mission, which again is pretty helpful. I mean, that's a nice way to look at it. I'm very keen on that. Finally, for this first kind of chapter in laying out mechanics, it also shows you when you unlock collectibles. Now that sounds obvious, why wouldn't it? But I've had some game guides that don't lay out collectibles super well, and not only do they not lay out collectibles well, but they also don't give you a huge amount of support for when you should start going after collectibles. And this guide, within the first chapter, shows you this is where you get collectibles. You can start to get tags if you're so inclined, and here's how you do them and where to find them in the guide. I find that to be absolutely fantastic. So we've covered the general flow of the game guide, not including the odd job section. We'll get to that. But we've covered sort of how the game guide functions. It lays out your various mechanics. It sets a baseline for each mission. If you unlock a new activity, all of that's very reasonable. A lot of that's very helpful. It gives you tips in the mission. If it's like, hey, it's a tough part, do this. Awesome. That's great. But I do take a little bit of umbrage with the third chapter and the way the third chapter is structured, particularly with the mission Yay Kaboom Boom, so to speak. What makes me upset, I suppose, about Yay Kaboom Boom, which is the final mission in chapter 3, right before you get into the desert and Las Venturas. What upsets me about Yay Kaboom Boom is it's actually located smack dab in the middle of the chapter, right? Rather than being the last mission, which it is for this section, it's located directly in the middle of the section. And what that means is you would normally do, the garage strand, you would do the syndicate strand, you would do the zero strand and the woozy strand, and then you'd finish off with Yay Kaboom Boom. But Yay Kaboom Boom is technically part of the syndicate strand, and it lists it as the 10th mission, even though, as you can see in this screen grab here, you can only get it after Terreno's Last Flight, which is the penultimate syndicate mission, and the Da Nang thing. And that is technically the last mission of the woozy strand, which is located on page 119. I just feel weird about it that on page 119, 14 pages later, you can finally go back to page 105 and do Yay Kaboom Boom. It doesn't matter. It functionally doesn't do anything. There's no reason why the author, who's self-proclaimed Tim, the B-O-G-N, not O-B-G-Y-N, B-O-G-N, couldn't have split the syndicate strand into maybe 2 parts, or at the very least included Yay Kaboom Boom as, you could call it an epilogue to the San Fierro section. I mean, it effectively is. It unlocks the desert and Las Venturas, and I just feel like it works better as that. But you know what? As a guide, it lists it. It's there. You can do it. It tells you when to go back to the guide section. Cool. That's one of the functions as to why I would consider this average, I suppose. Not bad average. Not average in the sense of like, it's not good. It's not great. It's great. It's a good guide for a great game. Actually, a great guide for a great game. It just simply showcases, I suppose, what you could consider the fault of the medium. How do you scope out something so dense in a way that's concise, in a way that makes sense, in a way that flows? And the answer is, you do your best. Now here's where the guide gets funny. Right after the San Fierro mission strands, you literally can go straight to the desert and Las Venturas, and yet the guide decides to take a detour. Now, there's a couple of thoughts as to why the guide takes a detour into odd jobs, and my general working theory is as soon as you finish Yay Kaboom Boom, which sounds like some joke on Cartoon Network from the early aughts, you have every section of the map available to you. You can go right back to Los Santos. You can go finish up San Fierro photo ops if you're so inclined. You can go to Las Venturas and get the horseshoes. You can go throughout the entirety of the San Andreas state, get oysters, get the stunt jumps, and get flowers. So the guide now, because you have everything unlocked area-wise, decides to take a break and send you to do odd jobs. This is good because it reminds you, hey, you should probably collect things before you finish the game, otherwise you may not be motivated to do so. I mean, I get it. I've beat a lot of games where I'm missing 1 or 2 trophies, and I look back and I go, do I want to spend 6 hours doing it? And the answer is, I don't want to, but I'm gonna. I'm mad about it, but what else am I going to do? Of course I'm going to go and spend 12 hours doing this awful activity for a bronze that's going to give me a platinum, and I'm going to feel bad, and it's not going to be worth my time, and I'm going to look back years ago and go, probably should have gone outside, walked the dog, touch some grass, but sure, I'm going to do it. So it's a nice reminder to, hey, maybe do something else. But more than that, it tells you you're nearing the end, right? That you can finish the game now if you want, go knock out the rest of the areas, but it may behoove you to knock this stuff out now rather than later. And so let's kind of go into this section. This is to me the most interesting section in that it normally would fit at the end of the book as a final part of the guide. It would be there as like and check the appendix for odd jobs and other pastimes, but it's smack dab in the middle, bisecting the game. So what you can see here is they bring the maps back from the discrete chapter sections. Each chapter section, as we established earlier, showcases each map, each collectible. Well, for some reason, they decided to bring it back here. It seems like another use of the same map, just more pages printed, but it's reasonable to have it here. I don't disagree, but it's all listed here, and it also comes with screenshots of where you can find certain collectibles. Well, actually, all the collectibles. Shows you, hey, it's in this spot. Look at the map. This was located on the screenshot in the game. Go there, find it. We're going to cover these screenshots a little bit later. There's some more to say about these, but in terms of the flow of the guide, smack dab in the middle of the guide is your collectibles. Your collectibles have screenshots, and you can track them via the location on the map with the number there and the number in the legend next to the map. Cool. That makes sense. Very reasonable. Does it for everything. Flowers, which again is not part of the 100% collectibles. Stunt jumps, again, not part of it, but you can do it. And gang tag, so on and so forth. It also covers the miscellaneous odd jobs, right? The things you still need to do, side quests, side activities, such as the driving schools, bike schools, pilot schools, various stadium events, vehicle missions, the classic paramedic, taxi driver, trucking, vigilante, all very good stuff since GTA 3 at least. And the challenges like the BMX races, Chiliad challenges, courier, freight train gyms, so on and so forth. And I find those to be equally fascinating. For the various BMX challenges, it does list where to do them, and it does show the path of each challenge, which I really like. A lot of these early PS2, isn't mid PS2, but a lot of these PS2 games and open world games will have races that really don't exist or don't matter to the plot of the game. They're just kind of stuck in there. Crackdown 3 was a bad one for that, but it showcases all the various races you can do, all the various activities you can do, and the checkpoints where they're located, the loop, and it's not super helpful in that you still have to do it, but it's nice to see the path if you have trouble seeing where you're going. I find it to be a very helpful portion of the guide. The penultimate part of the odd job section that I tend to have umbrage with, or some would say take umbrage with, is the export-import. If you recall earlier in the video, I mentioned, hey, there's the vehicle list and it shows you the types of vehicles in the game, but only their sex appeal. What's tough is there's, ever since at the very least GTA 3 to my memory, there is a mechanic where you have to import and export vehicles. Importing and export vehicles is not hard. When you hop in a vehicle, the game goes, hey, you can drop it off at the port and get money. And I say, cool. The problem is some of the vehicles are in pretty abstract places or just have very bad spawns. And because of that, you can be spending a couple hours trying to find certain vehicles and you're just going to have a bad time. And so while the guide does note, hey, these are the vehicles, these are the vehicles you need to find, it doesn't tell you where to find the vehicles. If we go back to the vehicle section, it gives you a description of the vehicles. Take the Buffalo under muscle cars. Have you seen this year's Buffalo? Call Catalina in Fern Ridge for a test drive. Export 35K. So maybe you can go to Fern Ridge to find one. Maybe that one helps. But then look above it to Sentinel. 4-door luxury is just a phone call away. It's got class and speed. Exporters pay 35K for this vehicle, so act fast before it's gone. But it doesn't tell you where to get it. You just kind of have to find it and hope. I find that needlessly obnoxious. I just wish, I don't know. It's very difficult to include the vehicle locations because it's such a big map. But the import-export mechanics ever since GTA 3 just drive me up the wall. It's great, it's fun, but some vehicles are beyond esoteric, and having to find them yourself is pretty stinky. But other than that, that's it. Like, that's the biggest gripe I've got with the guide, is the import-export portion, just because it's a big mechanic of the game. You need to do it for the 100%, but it's not super helpful. It's cool that it's there and you can see the list, but that's where that ends. The final portion of the main odd job section are the vehicle missions, which, I mean, they're whatever, burglar. It tells you where to do the burglar. It tells you how many you need to do, and it tells you what to do them. But you got burglar, you got vigilante, and they're cool to showcase kind of the best vehicles to use or how to do them. But it's they're kind of tedious. I'm not gonna lie, but they're not my favorite mechanics. But it is nice that the guide covers them and gives you ways to handle them and sort of the mechanics behind them and your reward. So if you don't want to do it for the 100%, maybe do it for the base armor value increase. It's good. It's a good section. It's very helpful. Finally, though, they do have a section that covers non-important pastimes or pastimes that are simply available to you even though it's not part of the 100%. The one that makes me laugh, there's two we're going to cover. But the one that makes me laugh every time I read it is the 2-player missions. It starts by saying, surprise, surprise, 2-player in a GTA game. It doesn't get any better than this. And this is where 10 years later, GTA 5 comes out. And you kind of laugh 10 years after that and go, well, it kind of does get better than this. I don't know how much GTA Online you guys have played, but it's scuffed. So it's cute that this guide is very excited for 2-player GTA. I agree. It's a fun thing to do, but it does kind of make me laugh seeing it listed as like, isn't this great? And I'm like, well, the next time you're in San Andreas, it's gonna become a behemoth. But I do like it. It's cool to see it listed. In sincerity, I didn't know this game had multiplayer. The only version I played was the questionable 360 port, which is still better than the Series X port. Kind of ironic, but yeah, I played that version and I enjoyed it. I had no real problems with it, but it's not in that version, I believe. Cool that it does. I find that kind of neat, but it does lay that out in the various missions you can do, and I find that kind of cool. The final section it does mention, and this is where I like to get into the personality of the guide author, which is kind of my whole appeal with game guides. I love reading them because you get a slice of life as to what's going on in the world. You start to see what the person who wrote it thinks, and I find it very interesting. One of the best sections to read the personality is the girlfriend section. You don't have to date anyone in this, and anyone who's played San Andreas remembers the infamous hot coffee mod, so it's kind of funny seeing it in the guide here, and it's not that mod, but that's what got them into trouble. It shows you girlfriend's taste at the bottom, kind of what they're all into, and it shows, for Denise, you've got her hooked to rescuing her from the burning apartment, but don't show up to her house without lots of sex appeal. She likes men with meat on their bones for Michelle Cons, spends some time eating fatty foods, you still need a lot of sex appeal, and it's funny to see it listed with what they require and describing it as, big men, meat on their bones, average, pose as a gimp, which is really funny. But yeah, it's just fun to see them all listed out in ways that are silly to the point, and they're good. They're very good section. It's very helpful to view the partners in that way. How I think this section really showcases Tim the BOGN's personality is by showcasing the various likes of the potential partners, by showcasing where you get them from and showcasing how it functions in the game. It could be as simple as do this, but saying meat on the bones and whatnot. It's very funny. The final portion of the guide before you get into kind of the bonus fun breakdown stuff is, in fact, the pack-in map. You're not going to see it all on screen right now. It's not from me. That's a big map. But you'll see it now. So much like other guides of this era, and especially kind of bleeding into the later aughts and the 10s, the 2019, the whole 18, 19, whatever, Prima, Brady, shutdown, whole thing. But they all started including maps and collectibles and buy this for the poster. And it's been doing that for a while. I've got some versus books back there that cover posters and have posters and collectibles, but I do find it fascinating. There's a pack-in map, and this is like the 4th map in the book that is just like discreetly located. And this map doesn't really contain anything I'd consider helpful. In sincerity, it doesn't have like collectibles listed or activities. It got some activities, got odd jobs, but it's not the bulk of the game. You want the map for is not really for the odd jobs. You want the map for the collectibles. But it's a cool little wall piece. Somebody had it up in their office with some other collectible maps. You'd think, oh, that's cool, little gaming cartography room. Look at that, it's kind of fun. So it's a neat little pack-in. That's the game guide. Like, that's it. You've got your main chapters. You've got 6 main chapters of game content. You've got some basics. You've got maps, pack-in maps. You've got your odd jobs, your not super helpful odd jobs, your other pastimes, they call it, the ones that don't count for percentage. And that's it. It doesn't have a list of the songs in the game that I noticed. The soundtrack's kind of the whole point of GTA, right? If you're playing GTA and you're not jamming out to the music, are you really playing GTA? It also doesn't list where to find vehicles for import-export, which we talked about before, and that drives me up the wall. But for the most part, that is what I would call the average guide. It is well designed, well thought out, showcases what you can do in the game, what the game allows you to do, and gives you tips, tricks, and automobiles to do them. Right? In this case, literally automobiles. It's GTA, Grand Theft Auto. What do you want? This is a good guide to look at to kind of start the discussion for the form, function, uses, and passion, I suppose, for the medium, and not simply the internet came and they went, yeah, okay, great. You and me both, buddy. Anyone who has eyes can see that. I just say that, but let's go ahead and cover the beginning of the end, I suppose, for the game guide as through 2004. Anyone who's ever owned a game guide has noticed errors. That's fine. People are human. Mistakes happen. Sometimes the mistakes are on the writers just themselves. They misprint something. They miswrote something, used the wrong keystroke, and the editor didn't catch it. And cool. It happens, right? Goes through a couple of hands. Things don't make it. Whatever. Sometimes it's on the developer. In my own investigations and readings through both the walkthrough by Doug Walsh, no, not paid, just go to read, it's pretty good, and my own discussions with Tim, the OBGYN, the author of the guide, right? Not the BOGN, no, OBGYN. I learned a lot of the errors that you find in guides that say maybe, something in the book is in the wrong place, or there's a screenshot that's wrong because the collectible isn't there. A lot of that happens because the guides have to go to print sooner than when the game comes out, because if you don't have the guide on the shelf before the game comes out, you lose massive money, because most people buy the guide with the game when it came out, because how else are you going to beat it, right? With your own bootstraps? We all want help. Come on. Because of all that, a lot of times there's mistakes in guides. And it's again, not always on the author, but it does happen, and that's okay. One thing about the San Andreas guide is it famously has mistakes. It was right around 2004-05 when it came out, because it came out right in that early mass use of the internet. Internet's been around for a while before then, but it was really the first time it was in most people's homes. On average, you could hop in, hop out, expect someone in a chat room sort of thing. Online forums were less of a, I have a university email, and more of a, I have a phone line that also works for the internet, and that's pretty cool. In 2004, you can start to get more than just dial-up, but for a lot of America, dial-up was still kind of the thing. I knew people who had dial-up for a very long time, and I'm like, can you not? And the answer is no, because it's not available in the area, because it's all a monopoly. And listen, man, I got Comcast pinions. But in this case, you can see on the San Andreas tagging map, there's a double 79. Now, that's just simply mistake of either the copyist or the writer or somebody, editor. I don't know. Somebody didn't catch a 79. That's fine. It happens. There are people online who have cataloged the various mistakes in the guide. One guy on Reddit, not too long ago, actually, a little over a year ago, there are 3 variations on the San Andreas guide. 2 of them are PlayStation 2. One of them is Xbox PC. The PS2 guide that I have, which is the first edition of it, has mistaken gang tags on the map, has pictures for photos incorrectly numbered, and horseshoes that are incorrectly located on the map. The second version of the PS2 guide, which would also be the second guide published for this game specifically by Brady, has everything fixed except the horseshoe mistakes, and the third version of the guide, the one for Xbox and PC, fixes all those mistakes, and it should just be cool. It should all just work, right? This Redditor also mentions Brady Games did correct the map on their website via errata pages, and you can print it out and use them, and I didn't realize that they had errata pages. So what did I do? I went online and tried to find some errata pages, and boy, was that an adventure. It took way more time to find errata pages than I care to admit, but I eventually found them, and I have included screen grabs of each for your viewing pleasure. You can see right here in the photo ops in the Los Fierros section. They have fixed the locations and actually changed the locations a little bit. On the left side of the screen is the original mistakes. The right side of the screen is the errata pages with the fixed photo op locations. And in the middle, you can see the map. And in this case, the map syncs up with the errata page, but not with the original. And the map is unchanged. There was not an errata page with the map. They just simply adjusted the photo ops as they were there. You can see pretty different. You can see one says Missionary Hill, and in the errata page it says Missionary Hill. In the other one, it says Bridge Chemicals north of Easter Bay, which is not D3. And so that's cool. It's cool that they fixed it. It's cool that they sent that out. There's the photo ops. There's then corrected screenshots and corrected descriptions all in the right place. Finally, in this section, you can see the horseshoes corrected map. The original map, you can see every single thing was shifted like half an inch to the left. Anyone in the comments who doesn't deal in inches, let me know, and I'll make fun of you. But no, you can see it shifted to the left a good margin, and that completely throws off where you find collectibles. If you know that, you can adjust it mentally where it should be. But that does say that in the middle of printing or as it was getting finalized, someone may have shifted a layer and it just went, and that is enough to throw you off a good deal. And so it's good that they fixed that with the errata pages. They also did fix the horseshoe screenshots. They have better screenshots, cleaner screenshots, correct screenshots for some of them. Some of them were incorrect. The notable incorrect screenshots are for horseshoe 25, 28, and 43. And you can see between 25, 28, and 43, zooming in shows you, wow, those are really different locations, very different locations. Better screenshots now, even just categorically, and they're just generally cleaner. And so it's nice that they did send out errata pages to fix that. It's great. You could have printed them out. I ended up going through I don't even find them. That's just like a point of interest. I had to go through Wayback Machine into a certain. Actually, that's not even there. No, it's not even Wayback Machine. I had to go through a forum post on a GTA forum from way in the past, and then I found a link to the errata pages. Clicked on that and took it to the Wayback Machine because naturally Brainy Games' website doesn't work anymore. And the Wayback Machine had to do some finagling, but we finally got them and we actually could download them. And I'm very excited to have them. It's great that they offered them for free. That's what you should do. But it's cool that they were offered and were reasonably accessible. On a final point for this guide specifically, let's look at early 2004, 2005 forum posts that cover this guide and kind of give a little bit of insight into why the internet took over and naturally pushed out game guides. I mean, the internet is quick. You can easily cover mistakes. You can go bam, 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 done, right? Rather than having to wait for errata pages, which are distributed online, by the way, which is the irony's palpable, and waiting for someone else to correct a book that you have, you could just go to the internet, find a video, or find a text guide in my preference, and they say this is where it's wrong and this is what to fix. And so the first post on a GTA guide that kind of showcased, the mistakes that were there and what it is, showcases the horseshoe oversights, the incorrect ones, and the screenshots that are incorrect, 3, 15, 24, 25, so on and so forth, and showcases, those mistakes. And it's cool to see it crowdsourced with the fixes, right? And so this kind of showcases the power of the online crowdsource that is not behooved to a publisher and instead can be done very quickly by oneself. And the final one, this one's funny to me because it does kind of add to the discussion that the guide is useful because it is easy to have a book with you rather than at the time. Imagine having, a laptop back then, those big old bulky things, or having to take your tower with you to your couch because you probably weren't playing it on a monitor and you probably had a, if you were really lucky, 40-inch big boy TV, 4x3 projector. But you had these big boy screens that were very hard to move, and you weren't going to move it next to your computer. But this forum post, I hope this person's doing well. I bought this guide for the simple reason that I can't see my PC from my PS2. I knew I was going to find all the horseshoes, tags, photo ops, and oysters to get 100%, and I planned on using this guide for it. In fact, the rest of the stuff, while helpful, wasn't what I got the guide for. The time to collect the items comes. The tags were fine, except one was missing from the map, but I found it by using the picture. Next come the photo ops. First thing I notice is the number on the maps are completely out of sync with the pictures and descriptions. Goddamn, I think. But I managed since photo ops are easy to do without a picture and description. The next thing that comes is horseshoes. I think they can't screw those up too. I was so wrong. Every horseshoe icon on the map was about 1 centimeter to the left. It was manageable, but all the same, annoying. I'm sorry to say this, but what kind of work at Brady Game? If you don't even check through a guide once it's been printed and just release it with these errors, what does that say about the company? They didn't have one person to look through the guide and possibly check the most important things, like the collection. Anyone who bought the guide will have found it, so why couldn't they? Then they think they could fix it by releasing the fixed pages in PDF form. No. I bought the guide because I can't see my PC from my PS2, and I am not printing those pages out since they will be bad quality. And the fact that I've already collected everything. Wish I could sue him, smiley face. Yeah. There you go, man. That's that early internet right there. But you can see there, even through that anger and some really hard R words. Thank you, early internet. Very cool. You can see, the crowdsourcing and that eventually, even though they did release the routed pages and you don't have to print it out, just, I don't know, run back and forth. Use memory, grab your little disposable camera and go, and then take it. Here's what you gotta do. Rather than printing it out, here's what you gotta do. You gotta take your disposable camera that you got for your little vacation down to Disney World. You gotta go take a photo. You gotta go, I'm walking down to Walgreens. I'm paying $30 to get this thing printed, the whole roll, just camera photos of the guide. And it's gonna be great. Or spend a ton of money on a digital camera that's like 2 megapixels and you can't read it anyway. So I get it. I get the annoyance. But again, I think what these guys are missing and what ultimately showcases about game guides and why I love them is the human element and the errors that happens and the fact that even though the guide was already done with the build they had available, things change before a game goes gold. Things, especially in that era where you can't patch them, and things will always be slightly different between the finished product and what the writers had to work with. I find the passion for the guide well placed, but maybe don't sue the guide author. Mistakes happen. Chill out, The sun still rises, and it's been 20 years. If you're the person who wrote this and you happen to find this video, let me know how you're doing, and if you still would like to sue Tim, the OBGYN. And so, as this video comes to a close, I can't help but consider the GTA San Andreas guide as the average, but instead of the average guide, I keep saying it's the average guide, right? But it's not average. It's significantly better than average. How do you chart out, again, such a large game with so many collectibles, so many objects, so many potential activities in a way that's concise, to the point, and under, what is this? Is this, under 300 pages. You could easily go for 4 for this. Well, you could easily go to 3. 4, you can, maybe. You might be able to do 4, but definitely 3 with some other things. But it's good. It gets you through the game. It covers everything you need to do. It's great even. Gets you what you need to do, and you are good to go. You can experience all the game without a lot of stress. The only thing you may hit a snag with are, if you have the original PS2 guide, as I do, some of the collectibles in the wrong place. You can work with that, right? There's ways to work around that even back then. And the import-export leaves a little bit to be desired, but hey, every guide has its ups and downs, and this to me is kind of the perfect guide to explore every other guide around it, from like 1996 to where we are now, post-2019. Not a lot of other game guides being made. We'll cover that later in a different video, right? But I feel like this is just the base. This GTA guide right here is just a really good baseline for viewing every other guide. It's very smart. It's very well done. I love it. I think Tim, the OBGYN, did such a great job in nailing this guide and doing some really cool things with it. And I find it fascinating that people were so angry online with it. Like, we all know now, internet, everyone's really nice on the internet now, and there's no conflict, and forums are just happy and open, and discourse runs free. And have you been on Reddit since it exploded, or? Nah, me neither. Well, thanks for watching part 1. I'm very excited to cover the next part, and what will be who knows how many parts. For the next video, we're covering another fascinating game guides. We've established the core game guide, GTA San Andreas, as just like what a game guide can do, what it should do. Mistakes, sure, there may be a round of pages, but it gets you through it regardless. There's community that helps defend you, and it's nice. What if I told you that there are so many more guides that are less concise than this, and so many guides for even just one game? In this case, there are only 2 guides for this game I'm willing to cover right now. They're the 2 guides that are vastly different, and they both offer something interesting. We're sticking with GTA. We're sticking with Grand Theft Auto. But instead of going forwards, we're going backwards. There were 2 discrete game guides for Grand Theft Auto 3, one of which is over 100 pages longer than the other one. Tune in next time. Thanks for watching the GTA San Andreas video on exploring game guides beyond just the internet killed. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and leave a like, slap that subscribe button, make like an award, ring that bell, leave a comment for something I did wrong. If you don't like how I pronounce the word Prima, let me know in the comments below. If there's anything you want me to cover game guide wise, hit me up and I'm happy to take a look. Make sure to check out this other cool video and just hang out. Bye.